Most people think living to 100 is a matter of luck. Good genes, right family, fortune smiling at the right moment. I have spent nearly 3 decades sitting across from patients in their 80s and 90s, and I can tell you with certainty that luck is almost never the explanation. The people who live long, healthy, independent lives past 100 share something that has nothing to do with luck. They share 6 specific abilities that most people their age have already lost, and if you are 80 years old and your body can still do these 6 things, you are not hoping to reach 100. You are already on the road. My name is Dr. David Mercer. I've spent 29 years studying aging patterns in over 10,000 patients between the ages of 65 and beyond 100. I have sat with people who reached 103, still sharp, still moving, still genuinely living. And I have sat with people who did not make it to 85. The difference is not what most people imagine. It is not wealth or medicine or any single dramatic intervention. It is 6 quiet, measurable, trainable abilities that the long-lived never let go. A man named Ernest came to see me last year. He was 82. He had driven himself in. He walked across the parking lot carrying his own jacket, climbed the 4 front steps without a railing, and arrived in my examination room with a steady breath and an unhurried gait. "Ernest," I said when he sat down, "how old do you plan to live to?" He said, "Doctor, as long as I am still useful." I am not done yet. I ran 6 assessments that afternoon. He passed every one. I told him what that meant biologically. He listened, nodded once, and said, "Then I had better keep doing what I am doing." That is the most accurate description of the path to 100 I have ever heard from a patient. Subscribe right now. What comes next is some of the most important information you will hear about what determines how long and how well you live. Ability number 1. You can walk up 2 full flights of stairs at a steady pace without stopping, without holding the railing, and arrive at the top with your breathing recovered within 30 seconds. 2 flights, not 1. 2 full flights, climbed at continuous pace, followed by recovery to normal breathing in under 30 seconds. This is the cardiovascular and respiratory threshold that distinguishes the body aging slowly from the body aging at an accelerated rate. 1 flight is maintenance. 2 flights is reserve. And reserve, the gap between what your body can do when asked and what it needs to do daily, is one of the single greatest predictors of longevity in the medical literature. Here is why this matters biologically. Climbing 2 flights continuously requires your heart to sustain elevated output for roughly 90 seconds. It requires your lungs to process increased oxygen demand. It requires your leg muscles to perform repeated high-force contractions against gravity. And the recovery time tells me something equally important. How quickly your cardiovascular system returns to resting state measures the efficiency of your vagal brake and the overall reserve of your cardiac and pulmonary systems. A body recovering in under 30 seconds has cardiovascular reserve. A body still breathing hard at 90 seconds after 1 flight does not. Arthur was 81, walked 30 minutes every day for 20 years. He sat down and said, "Doctor, I am in better shape than men 20 years younger." I asked him to climb 2 flights with me. He made the first flight. Halfway up the second, his hand went to the railing. At the top, he stood for 50 seconds before his breathing settled. "Arthur, how long have you needed to catch your breath after stairs?" "Maybe 2 years now," he said. "I used to be fine at the top." He had attributed it to age. It was not age. It was a cardiovascular reserve declining while his daily walk, too easy to challenge it, masked the loss entirely. A study from Edinburgh University followed 3,300 adults aged 78 to 88 for 10 years. Those who could complete 2 flights of stairs with recovery under 30 seconds had 5 times lower rates of cardiac events and 4 times lower rates of all-cause mortality over the decade compared to those who could not complete 2 flights without stopping. 5 times lower cardiac events, 4 times lower mortality from 2 flights of stairs. Your test right now. Find 2 flights of stairs, no railing, steady continuous pace. Climb both flights and stop at the top. Count the seconds until your breathing has fully settled to normal. Under 30 seconds puts you in the longevity zone. Over 60 seconds tells you exactly what needs your attention. Arthur started stair interval training, 2 flights up and down 3 times each morning, no railing. He added brisk uphill walks twice weekly. 8 weeks later, he climbed 2 flights in my building and stood at the top. He waited. Then he said, 26 seconds. His voice carried the satisfaction of a man who has proved something to himself. I told him he had not just proved something, he had changed something. Ability number 2. You can maintain a grip strong enough to open a new jar lid without assistance on the first attempt. Grip strength is one of the oldest and most consistently validated biomarkers of longevity in medicine. Not because opening jars matters in itself, but because the force your hand generates against resistance is a direct and accurate window into the biological age of your entire musculoskeletal system, your cardiovascular system, and your nervous system simultaneously. When the hand weakens, it reflects a systemic process happening throughout the body's muscle and neural tissue. The hand shows it first because it is tested by daily life constantly and because the muscles of the forearm are among the most densely innervated in the body. A new factory-sealed jar requires approximately 25 to 30 pounds of rotational force to open. That requires the full coordination of intrinsic hand muscles, forearm flexors, shoulder stabilizers, and core bracing in a single integrated effort. After 80, when this coordinated force starts failing, it signals that the entire neuromuscular integration system is falling below the threshold that daily independent life requires. Constance was 80. She had been asking her neighbor to open jars for 8 months. She said it without embarrassment because she had decided it was simply how things were now. I asked her to grip my hand as hard as she could. The force was less than half of what I would expect for her build. Constance, when did you last use your hands for something requiring real force? She thought carefully. Years. I stopped gardening 2 years ago. Before that, it was her ceramic studio. When she stopped asking her hands to work against resistance, her hands had quietly obliged. A study from Leiden University followed 2,800 adults aged 78 to 92 for 12 years. Those who maintained grip strength above the threshold required to open standard resistance containers independently had 4 times the survival rate at the end of the study period compared to those who could not. 4 times. And critically, the researchers found that grip strength was a stronger predictor of 12-year survival than blood pressure, cholesterol levels, or any single laboratory biomarker measured at the start of the study. Stronger than any blood test. From the force in a hand. Take a jar from your kitchen right now, one that is new or tightly sealed. Try to open it without using any tool or technique. Just your hand, first attempt, full grip. Did it open? If yes, you have this ability. If not, your neuromuscular system is sending a message that deserves a clear response. Constance started hand and forearm resistance training. A grip strengthener in her pocket during television viewing. Resistance band wrist exercises every morning. Returning to her ceramic studio twice a week. 10 weeks later, she opened a new jar of tomato sauce in my office on the first attempt. She set it on the desk and said, "I'm going to open every jar in my kitchen when I get home." Ability number 3. You can hold a full conversation, remember the beginning of the conversation by the end, and recall the person's name correctly 10 minutes after they have left. This is not a formal memory test. It is a functional one, the kind daily independent life requires. Not the recall of facts from the distant past, which is often preserved well into advanced age, but the working and recent memory that manages the present. That holds a conversation thread long enough to respond coherently at the end. That encodes a new person's name and retrieves it minutes later. These 2 things are the first practical casualties of hippocampal aging, and tell me more about the brain's functional trajectory than most formal cognitive assessments. After 80, the hippocampus, the brain's primary structure for encoding new information, has lost between 10 and 15% of its volume in the average person. The prefrontal cortex, which manages working memory that holds a conversation thread active, has lost significant processing density. In the people aging toward 100, these losses are measurably smaller, not because of genetics alone, because of decades of cognitive demand that maintained neural density and the blood flow that keeps brain tissue alive. The long-lived brain is almost always a brain that was used hard and kept working. Margaret was 83. Her daughter had brought her in after noticing she was losing the thread of conversations and struggling with names she had known for years. Margaret was entirely lucid and clearly intelligent in our conversation. We spoke for 20 minutes. At the end, I asked her to tell me the name of the nurse who had greeted her on arrival. She could not retrieve it. I asked what we had discussed in the first 5 minutes. She recalled the broad topic, but had lost the specific details. Her daughter waited outside, worried. I was not worried the way the daughter was. I was interested. Because Margaret's recall was not failing uniformly. It was failing selectively in ways that pointed to a specific pattern of hippocampal and prefrontal decline that responds well to the right demand. A study from the University of Bordeaux followed 2,700 adults aged 80 to 95 for 8 years. Those who maintained accurate conversation threading and recent name recall at baseline had 4 times lower rates of dementia onset and were 3 times more likely to remain cognitively independent at the end of the study compared to those showing functional memory decline. 4 times lower dementia rates. 3 times more likely to stay independent from the practical memory that daily life runs on. Here's your test right now. Think about the last 3 people you had a conversation with today or yesterday. Can you name all 3? Can you recall specifically what each conversation was about? Not in general, but in specific detail. Can you remember the order in which these conversations happened? If all 3 come back clearly and specifically, your functional memory is intact. If one or more feels vague, that specific vagueness is worth paying attention to today rather than tomorrow. Margaret started a daily memory practice. Every evening she wrote down the names of every person she had spoken with, and one specific thing each had said. She started the daily crossword again. She joined a book discussion group where she was required to hold and argue specific textual details. 12 weeks later, I asked her the nurse's name as she arrived. She said it immediately, then added, "Last time her earrings were blue, but today they are green." I laughed. She looked at me steadily and said, "Doctor, I refuse to lose my mind without a fight. Now here is where this list changes entirely. The first 3 abilities measure how well the body and mind are maintaining what they already have, the foundation. But the next 3 measure something more rare, whether the person is not just maintaining, but actively regenerating. Whether the biology is working in their favor. The people who reach 100 fully alive have almost always mastered all 3 of what comes next. And the 4th ability is the one that most surprises my patients when I name it as a longevity predictor. Ability number 4. You can fall asleep within 20 minutes of lying down, sleep for at least 6 hours, and wake once or fewer during the night. Sleep architecture is one of the least discussed and most consequential biological processes in all of longevity research. After 80, most people assume that broken, shallow, frequently interrupted sleep is simply what aging feels like. It is not. It is what accelerated aging feels like. And that distinction matters enormously because one is accepted and the other is actionable. Here is what happens during sleep. The long-lived body performs correctly. In the first 90 minutes, a healthy body descends into deep, slow-wave sleep, during which growth hormone is released, cellular repair is accelerated across every organ system, and inflammatory markers accumulated during waking are cleared. In subsequent cycles, REM sleep allows the hippocampus to transfer the day's learning into long-term storage, while the glymphatic system flushes metabolic toxins from neural tissue. When sleep is broken or shallow, none of these processes complete. The body wakes having carried out only partial repair. Across years, this accumulated partial repair is one of the primary drivers of accelerated aging after 80. Vivian was 82. She told me she slept 8 hours every night. I asked her to describe the night precisely. "I fall asleep around midnight," she said. "I wake at 2 and again at 4. I get up at 6. I asked if she woke feeling rested. She looked at me. I wake feeling like I spent the night on the floor. She was in bed 8 hours and getting perhaps 90 minutes of restorative sleep scattered across a night of repeated waking. I asked about her bedroom. Television on until she fell asleep. Room at 73 degrees. Phone on the nightstand. A sleep environment designed, unintentionally but effectively, to prevent every stage of deep rest from completing. A study from Maastricht University followed 3,000 adults aged 80 to 95 for 9 years. Those who achieved what researchers defined as restorative sleep architecture, falling asleep within 20 minutes, sleeping 6 or more hours, waking once or fewer, had 4 times lower rates of cognitive decline, 3 times lower rates of cardiovascular events, and lived an average of 5 years longer than those with chronically disrupted sleep. 4 times lower cognitive decline. 5 additional years of life from the hours spent sleeping correctly. Your test right now. Over the next 3 nights, track how long it takes you to fall asleep, how many times you wake, and how you feel within 15 minutes of getting up. Honest tracking over 3 nights will tell you more about your sleep architecture than any single night can. What you find is the starting point, not the final answer. Vivian made 4 changes. Television removed from the bedroom, phone in the kitchen overnight. Room temperature lowered to 67 degrees. No food within 90 minutes of bedtime. At her 6-week follow-up, she said, "Doctor, I fall asleep before 10:30 now. I wake once, sometimes not at all. I get up at 6 and I am already there, already present in my own day." Ability number 5. You can still feel genuine excitement about something that has not happened yet. This sounds like an emotional state, not a physical ability. It is both. The capacity to experience anticipatory positive emotion, the neurological state of genuinely looking forward to something, is one of the most powerful and least discussed processes in the biology of longevity. It is driven by the dopaminergic system, the brain's reward and motivation circuitry, and after 80, it is one of the clearest neurobiological signals separating those aging toward 100 from those who are not. The dopaminergic system is not only about pleasure, it is about motivation, directed energy, and the neurological state that causes the body to prepare for a future it has reason to anticipate. When this system is active, it produces measurable physiological effects: lower cortisol, better immune function, improved sleep, stronger cardiovascular output. The person who wakes up genuinely excited about something that has not happened yet is a person whose entire biology is oriented toward a future, and biology oriented toward a future tends to keep the body alive to reach it. Philip was 84, healthy by most metrics, but something in his presentation concerned me. He answered every question thoroughly and with the mild detachment of someone describing someone else's life. I asked toward the end, "Philip, what are you looking forward to this week?" He thought for a noticeable pause. He said, "I do not know that I am looking forward to anything in particular." I asked about the week after. Same pause, same answer. I told him what I had just observed, not as criticism, as a clinical finding. He looked at me with an expression I have seen before, half surprised, half already knowing. A study from Rush University followed 2,400 adults aged 80 to 97 for 7 years. Those who reported consistent anticipatory positive emotion, having specific things they were genuinely looking forward to in the near future, had 3 times lower rates of cognitive decline, significantly lower inflammatory markers, and lived an average of 6 years longer than those who reported low or absent anticipatory emotion. 6 additional years. From looking forward to something specific. Think right now. What are you looking forward to this week? Not in a general sense. Something specific. A meal you are going to make. A person you are going to speak to. A program you are going to watch. A garden task waiting for the right morning. A letter you have been meaning to write. A trip, even a short one. A book you have not opened yet. If something came to mind immediately, you have this ability. If you are still searching, that search is the work that needs to start today. Philip committed to one specific thing per week that gave him something to anticipate. He planted a vegetable garden, booked a concert 3 weeks out, called an old friend he had not spoken to in 4 years, and arranged lunch for the following Thursday. He came back 2 months later looking like a different man. He said, "Doctor, I woke up yesterday excited about my tomatoes. I did not expect to feel that way about tomatoes." I told him that was not about tomatoes. That was his biology remembering that the future is worth being alive for. Ability number 6. And this is the ability that, in all my years of caring for patients who lived past 100, I have never seen absent. Not once. You have at least one relationship in your life that makes you feel genuinely known, not liked, not respected, not cared for in the general sense that families care for their elderly. Known. The specific experience of being in the presence of someone who understands how you think, who has witnessed your history, who does not require you to explain the context of your own life before speaking. This is not a luxury of the fortunate. It is a biological necessity of the long-lived. The research on social connection and longevity is among the most robust bodies of evidence in all of modern medicine. Across decades of study, The presence or absence of deep relational connection in old age is one of the strongest predictors of mortality ever identified. Stronger than smoking history. Stronger than physical inactivity. Chronic loneliness, which is not the absence of other people but the absence of being genuinely known, produces inflammatory responses equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes per day. It suppresses immune function. It disrupts sleep. It accelerates every biological aging process that medicine has found a way to measure. Ida was 81. She had a large family, children who called, neighbors who checked in. By every social metric, she was surrounded. She came to me for persistent fatigue and a low mood that had settled in 2 years earlier without explanation. I asked about the people in her life. She described them all warmly. Then I asked a different question. When did you last talk to someone who really knows you? Not someone who loves you. Someone who knows you. She was quiet for a long time. Her husband had died 4 years ago, she said. He was the person who knew me. No one has known me the way he did. She had warmth around her. She had presence around her. She did not have what she needed most. A study from Harvard Medical School followed 2,600 adults aged 78 to 95 for 11 years. Those who reported at least one relationship characterized by deep mutual understanding had 4 times lower rates of depression, 3 times lower rates of cognitive decline, and lived an average of 7 years longer than those who reported social connection without depth or genuine mutual knowing. 7 additional years. From one relationship where you are truly known. Your test right now. Think of the person in your life who knows you most completely. The person to whom you can say what you actually think without editing it first. When did you last speak to that person? When did you last tell them something true that you have not told anyone else? If that relationship is active and real and recent, you have this ability. If it has grown distant or was lost to death or time, rebuilding it or finding it in a new form is perhaps the most important work available to you. Ida found a grief support group. Not for counseling, but for people who understood loss from the inside. She reconnected with a university friend she had not spoken to in a decade. She began writing real letters to her eldest daughter. 6 months later, her daughter called after the 3rd letter and said, "Mom, I feel like I am meeting you for the first time." That is the beginning of being known. It is never too late to begin. Ernest came back 8 months after that first appointment. He sat down, and I asked how things had been. He said, "I planted a new garden in the spring. I called my brother every Sunday. I beat my walking record twice. I can still open every jar in my kitchen." I asked if he was sleeping well. "Like the dead," he said, and then laughed at himself. I asked what he was looking forward to. He did not hesitate. His granddaughter's wedding in October, a fishing trip in August, and a conversation tomorrow morning with his neighbor because she had just lost her husband and needed someone who had come out the other side. I told Ernest what I tell every patient who reaches this level of understanding. "You are not heading toward 100, I said. "You are already living like someone who deserves to. That is what these 6 abilities add up to. Not a checklist. A life that the body has been given every reason to extend. 2 flights for the heart. A jar opened by a strong hand. A conversation held and fully remembered. Sleep that repairs what the day asks. Something specific to look forward to. And one person who knows you completely. If you have all 6, protect them fiercely. Every single one. If you are missing one, you now know exactly where to start. Not tomorrow. Start today.